Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Swanky Cat Productions channel. My name is Ben. This is my 21 Tenere 700, and over here we've got my 22 Gen 3 KLR 650. So if you guys missed it, I did just put a video out not too long ago with 6 reasons that I think you should go with the Tenere 700 over the KLR. So tonight, the KLR gets its revenge with 7 reasons that I think you should go with the KLR over the T7. Now on that video, as well as others, I've got comments from people saying that they don't think it's fair that people compare these two bikes, and honestly, I could not disagree with that more. No, they might not be in the same class, no, they might not be the same price, but both of these bikes get the same exact job done at the end of the day, and I think maybe that's why you're watching this video. So I definitely have had a good amount of seat time on both of these bikes. I have ridden everything from highway to muddy single track and old logging roads on both of these. And honestly, I've loved every minute of it. So let's get right into this. The first thing that I think is a big driving factor about deciding between these two bikes is obviously the price. In my area, this bike was $3,000 cheaper than this bike. And I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent with this, but I've had people say that the Tenere 700 is twice the cost of a KLR in their area. I'm not sure where you're at, but I could pick up the Adventure ABS version of this bike for maybe $1,000 less than a Tenere 700. I got out the door with this bike for just a little bit over 10 grand. This one I paid just right around 7. And the second thing is maybe also a bit obvious, and that is availability. The Tenere 700 was available for a short period of time at a couple dealers around here. Now my dad is having a bit of a hard time finding one. There are dealers out there that have them. They're asking probably more than you should pay for a Tenere 700. There have been quite a few bikes that I have seen pop up with just a couple hundred miles on them for a price that 5 years ago probably would have been ridiculous for a used bike. Now in today's market, where you can buy a vehicle a year ago and sell it to a dealer now for more than you paid for it because the value of the dollar is going like that, I guess I can kind of understand where people want a little bit more. Obviously, a bike that you can buy and ride today is much better than a bike that you have to be on a waiting list for 2 years to pick up. That goes absolutely without saying. I don't care if it's a moped. If you can get out on the road and ride it, it is a far better machine than one that is out of reach for whatever reason. And if you are somebody that has your heart set on a Tenere 700, but all you can find is KLR 650s, this bike will not disappoint you as long as you have the right expectations. And what I mean by that is, don't expect a bike that was designed just a couple of years ago with 70-some horsepower. Expect a bike that was designed back in the 80s and really hasn't changed much since. But keep in mind that that is with good reason. This bike does have something just special about it, and I love this machine. It is definitely more than capable of putting a smile on your face. It will get the exact same job done as the Tenere 700, maybe a little bit slower and a little bit bouncier, but this bike is worth buying, it is worth upgrading, and it is worth riding. This is a good machine. This next thing is something that I think about every time I take the Tenere 700 out, and that is the fact that if I crash it and break some stuff, I'm probably going to be waiting a long time for replacement parts from Yamaha. The KLR 650 is in every dealership in the US. You can find probably at least 3 of them anywhere you go, and eventually that will translate to more used parts out on the market. As far as aftermarket parts go right now, there are a good amount out there for the Tenere 700, but the KLR 650, even though it is a little bit new, I think is catching up pretty quick. And there are lots of parts that you can transfer over from your old Gen 2, like the skid plate, the handlebars, hand guards, foot pegs, not the foot peg brackets though. Honestly, probably the forks. I don't know if these are any longer. Does anybody know that? They might be. It has more rake on it. And of course, none of us want it to happen, but if a bike were to end up being totaled, this one would be fairly easy to replace. You could just walk into a dealership and buy another one. This one, you might end up buying one of these. Now, this next thing is something that I have messed with on both of these bikes a little bit, and I think they're in a much better position than when I first got them. But straight out of the dealership parking lot, this bike is going to be much more comfortable than the Tenere 700. This bike, the handlebars are so straight that if you're somebody my size anyways, which is 5'10", a 31-inch inseam, the bars are so straight that your wrists end up being cranked in like this just to kind of get to the bars and to try to hang on to the ridiculous broomstick of a bar that they've got on there. this thing hurt my wrist after a couple hours of riding. And you definitely don't have that with the KLR 650 bars. I sort of had the opposite issue with this bike. The sweep on those bars was so great, I felt like I was riding a beach cruiser on the trail. So I did swap this bar out for something that's a little bit straighter and a little bit higher. This bike can be kind of cramped when you're standing up, but I definitely feel a lot better about the bars that I've got on here now, and I will be putting a video out this weekend actually on that. So if you guys are interested, make sure you stay tuned for that, and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you guys want to see more videos like this. I put one out at least once a week. The other thing that is not so comfortable about this bike for somebody my size is the width of the seat. And yes, you heard me right, I did say width. The seat on the Tenere 700 is tall. It's about as tall as the Gen 3 KLR 650 is, I believe. You guys can correct me, but I think they're about the same seat height. But the width of the seat on this bike makes you have to put your legs out before you can put them down, which obviously makes it a lot harder to get to the ground with both feet anyway. And the Gen 3, I think now that I've got it set up for my weight, meaning I've cranked the preload up, which I do also have done on this bike, I think this one does feel a little bit taller, but just the way that the seat sort of squishes down and is also sort of rounded off and narrow in the front, and the bike itself being sort of narrow, is much more comfortable and much easier to hit the ground when you need to. Now, partially because of those things, but also for a few other reasons. If you're somebody that is newer to adventure motorcycles or newer to motorcycles just in general, I think you'll be more comfortable on this bike just in the way that it delivers its power, in the way that it handles. It's just, I think, better for somebody that's not experienced and not wanting to rip down the trails as fast as you can possibly go. Not to say that it can't do some intense stuff off-road. And if you're somebody that needs to do a lot of highway riding and thinks that you need the Tenere 700 just because it's going to be smoother, I have to say I don't really think that this bike is all that much smoother at highway speeds. Lower speeds, this definitely does not have the single cylinder thump that the KLR has. It has much lower vibrations up until 5,500 RPM, but honestly, with the new bars that I've got on this, I don't know that this really vibrates all that much more than this bike does. The foot pegs are a little bit different story though. I do have the non-dampened JNS lowering brackets on them, and I have metal pegs rather than the rubber ones. I don't know how much the rubber isolated stuff helped. I don't really think that it helped that much, maybe a little bit, I guess, at highway speeds, but everything can get a little bit buzzy down there. However, I mean, I think if you switch the seat out and you don't squeeze the tank, I don't really think this bike vibrates all that much more at highway speeds. I mean, I think technically you're going to be able to lower the vibrations on either of them by putting a different sprocket on the bike to kind of lower your RPM at the highway speeds, but the Tenere 700 is just not as smooth, I guess, as you'd think it might be. And the highway topic really leads nicely into the next thing, and that is range. The Tenere 700 at 140 miles, it's usually telling me that I need to put fuel in the tank. Obviously, you can stretch it a bit past that. I don't know if you could get 200 miles out of it or not. I guess maybe somebody can let me know down in the comment box. The KLR 650, I think I got 250 miles or more on the tank before it started blinking at me, and when I got to the gas station, I calculated the mileage that I got versus the fuel that should still be in the tank, and I think I could have gotten at least 300 miles out of this tank before it was completely empty. So that's at least 100 miles more range out of this bike. That is definitely impressive. Both of these are about 460 pounds. That 460 pounds is wet. So with both of these bikes dry, this bike is actually lighter than this bike. Yes, if you fill both of them up, this one's heavier, but who doesn't want to get an extra 100 miles out of their range? And if you don't fill the tank all the way up. And I get asked about fuel mileage a lot. Honestly, I just do not pay that close of attention to it. Both of them get about 50 miles to the gallon. Maybe you guys that own these bikes can kind of chime in down in the comment section and let us know what you're getting for mileage. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into that. This bike has a lot of stuff done to it as far as performance goes. This one does have a few things, but the ECU is not tuned on this bike yet. It will be as soon as I can get it over to Wheel Dynaworks when they have a program available for me, but I would expect to get about 50 out of each of them. The next thing is something that you simply just cannot go and buy. It's not something that you can upgrade. It is the support of the community behind the KLR 650. There are so many people out there that own these bikes all over the world There are so many people out there that own these bikes that are ready and willing and love to help new riders and will tell you all they know and will do it in a manner that is not condescending or is gatekeeping in any way. It's just a group of a bunch of good people that love bikes and love just getting out and enjoying nature and aren't on a motorcycle to prove any points or to try to get girls. They're just out there because they love their KLR and they love getting out and riding it. And I think there is just something that's really cool about that. And because there's a lot more of these on the road than the Tenere 700, there's going to be a lot more out there specifically about the Gen 3. All right, I think I've got my seventh thing, and I'm afraid to say that I can't actually tell you exactly what it is. I guess maybe it has something to do with everything that I've explained tonight. I honestly don't know how to put it into words, but there is just something about this bike, and hopefully you guys can help me out with this, but there's just something about this bike that just makes it cool. Not in the sense that it's cool like a rip sorting Tenere 700 is, but just something cool that it's a single cylinder, that it really hasn't changed much since the 80s, that it can get you through anything that a $25,000 Harley or BMW can, but it doesn't have to prove any points. It doesn't have to make anybody turn their head to look at it other than to figure out what the heck it is. But honestly, I think that the Gen 3 is really a very nice looking bike. I think maybe the fact that it does have a ridiculous amount of torque and also has a single cylinder thump to kind of thump you up the hills, it's just, I don't know, I think it's a combination of everything, and I guess it's just a feeling that you get when you're riding this bike. I don't know how else to put it other than that. This bike is just cool. And I'm well aware that there are people out there that just will never understand that, but I honestly think that this is a great motorcycle for anyone that has the right mindset for it, and is something that I do not think will let you down. I know people say that they have problems. I know people rip on them for not having enough horsepower, but the type of person that is really going to enjoy this bike can understand that horsepower is not everything, and I think this is a great option regardless of whether you would rather have one of these or not. This is a good bike and it's worth looking at, and I love it. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care, stay safe, stay swanky, get out, enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get, and if you can't do that right now, here's some more videos to check out in the meantime.